This incident happened on May 26, 2017 at 8:20 a.m. Mr. Harris here was in the area of Hubble and Puritan when he heard a woman crying and screaming hysterically. He ran over to the woman where she pointed to a fenced-in area. He went and looked in that area, the fenced-in area, and he saw two young boys about 10 and 12 years old being mauled by two large pit bulls. By this time, a few people had gathered around, but no one was actually doing anything. The fence was about 7 or 8 feet high, and the kids were in there, and they were being mauled by these two large pit bulls. Mr. Harris climbed the fence, had no weapons. He did pick up debris, and he began striking the dogs who were viciously biting these two young men. He managed to get one of the boys free. He helped the young boy over the fence, and both dogs at that point turned on Mr. Harris. At that point, Mr. Harris had no other choice but to jump out of the yard, to climb the fence and get out of the yard. At that point, the officers arrived. Officers Haverlock and Officer Calvin Lewis. Once the officers arrived at the run, they saw a large crowd of people, and they saw this one child getting mauled. Now it's just one child and two large pit bulls, and these pit bulls they're really tearing into this child. Now the officers managed to fire a few shots. They fired it in a safe direction to actually sort of scare the dogs away. They fired once, and the dogs sort of stopped biting the child, and they fired a second time. And when they fired that shot, Corporal Calvin Lewis here jumped into that fenced-in area with the two pit bulls. The second shot got the dogs to back up just enough where Officer Lewis could get in there, Corporal Lewis could get in there and fire a couple of shots, saving the second child that was in the yard. Now, just a couple of comments. Number one, Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris, he's just a citizen walking down the street. He sees these two kids getting mauled, and by this time there are people just watching the whole incident. Mr. Harris, he's not a big man. He has no weapons. He has nothing. He jumps into this fenced-in area that's 7 feet high, jumps down there into where there's two pit bulls, and they're mauling these children. And they start coming after him, and there's some debris in the yard. He picked up whatever he could, and he hit these dogs as hard as he could. He did whatever he could to get the dogs off these children. He just could not let that happen. He did manage to free one of the children, and that's when he also got out of the yard, because the dogs were now attacking him. After he got out of the yard, the police arrived, and just a couple of things about Corporal Lewis and Officer Haverlock. Now, they were on their way to a school crossing. When the run came out, it came out as a general broadcast, and Corporal Lewis, part of your job is to train and to educate officers. Now, in this situation, you're on your way to a school crossing, and when you heard this incident come out, you immediately told your partner that, hey, we're gonna not do the school crossing, but we're gonna go over to this run where this child is getting mauled by this dog. They head over there, and sure enough, there's a child getting mauled by two dogs. Now, one of the things I should also point out is, and this is captured on his body-worn camera, one of the things that Corporal Lewis and Officer Haverlock did was they devised, on the way to the run, they devised a plan. And they said, hey, you have a shotgun? I got a shotgun. Okay, well, as soon as we pull up, you're going to get in the trunk and get that shotgun ready. And as soon as they pulled up, they put the plan into action. They got there, and sure enough, this kid was getting mauled by two dogs. Officer Haverlock grabbed the shotgun while Corporal Lewis went over to where the kid was. He was not able to fire off a shot because the dogs were so close to the kid. He did not want to take a chance on injuring the child. And one of the things that I listened to on the body camera is that the child is saying, "Hey, I'm gonna die. Please don't let me die." And so they put their plan into action. They fired a shot with the shotgun. The dogs backed up a little bit. Corporal Lewis said, "This is my chance to do it. I want you to fire one more time." No sooner than when he fired that second shot, Corporal Lewis jumped down there with the dogs. There was enough separation to where Corporal Lewis was able to fire some shots and injure the dogs. He then he helped the kid over the fence. The second kid, there's a whole lot of blood at the scene too. But he managed to help the child over the fence, and then he got the shotgun and he finished off the dogs at that point. Officer Zeno and Officer Berrien, as soon as they arrived on the scene, they were extremely helpful. They started talking to witnesses. They were able to find out who these kids were because they really couldn't say very much at that point. But there's a school in the area. They managed to make it to the school, find out who the parents were for these two children. They happened to be brothers, 10 and 12 years old. And so they were able to notify the family, get the family to the hospital. They were also able to get to the station, get some bolt cutters, bring them back to the scene. And by the time I got to the scene, Sergeant Wilson was already there. Sergeant Wilson had directed everybody to do whatever it was they needed to do. He even had a crew go to the hospital to get the conditions. I know I was on the phone talking to A.C. Williams at the time. And thank you for getting that information to me.